Last Friday, Emily mentioned she was throwing a small, low-key gathering. Just a few colleagues, nothing major, she said with a breezy tone, acting like it was no big deal. She practically shoved me out the door, suggesting I spend the night at my buddy Jake's place. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but something about the way she said it didn't sit right. I couldn't put my finger on it, just a nagging feeling deep in my gut. So, I decided to cut my evening short and head back home earlier than planned. I figured I'd drop in, maybe grab something I forgot, just to see how her little get-together was going. But as I turned onto our street, something felt off. There were way too many cars lining the block for a casual hangout with just a few friends. When I stepped inside, the music hit me first, loud and thumping, definitely not background music for a quiet gathering. I pushed the door open wider, and the scene in front of me wasn't at all what Emily had described. Strangers filled every corner of the house, drinks in hand, laughing and talking like they owned the place. This was no small, cozy gathering. And then I saw her, standing near the kitchen with some guy I'd never seen before. Tall, athletic, leaning in way too close, his hand resting on her lower back. She hadn't noticed me yet, too busy laughing at whatever he was saying. The way she looked at him, how her body leaned into his touch, made my stomach churn. This wasn't right. She'd promised me it would just be a quiet evening with friends. But standing there, watching her with him, I realized how wrong I had been. For a moment, I was frozen in the doorway, trying to process what I was seeing. Emily still hadn't spotted me, too wrapped up in her conversation with this guy, practically glued to him. My mind raced, struggling to catch up with the reality in front of me. The laughter, the way she tilted her head toward him, letting his hand linger on her back like it belonged there. It felt far too intimate for just a friend. A knot tightened in my chest, and I struggled to breathe. Was I imagining things? Overreacting? I wasn't usually the jealous type, but this was different. Something was off, and I couldn't just stand by and watch. I started moving toward them, weaving through the crowd of strangers cluttering our house. As I got closer, she finally saw me. Her eyes widened for just a second, and her smile wavered. But almost immediately she composed herself, flashing a fake grin like nothing had happened. "Oh, you're back early," she said, her voice light as she quickly stepped away from him, trying to act casual. But I caught the flicker of panic in her eyes for a split second. The guy, whoever the hell he was, didn't even flinch. He just stood there, smirking, like he wasn't the least bit concerned about the tension that suddenly filled the air. It was as if he knew something I didn't. "Yeah," I said, my voice tight, eyes locked on Emily. "Thought I'd check out this quiet gathering you mentioned." Her smile faltered, but she kept it going. "Oh, you know how it is," she said, her voice a bit too cheerful. "A couple of people from work brought some friends. It wasn't supposed to get this big." I shifted my focus to the guy, feeling the heat rising in my chest. "And this is?" I asked, my blood boiling. Emily hesitated for just a moment. "Oh, this is Matt. He's a friend from work." "Just a friend from work, huh?" But the way they had been standing, the way she had been looking at him, it didn't feel like just friendship. I couldn't stop staring at the two of them. Matt didn't seem nervous. If anything, he looked right at home, like he belonged there, standing that close to my wife. That sick feeling in my gut twisted even tighter. I wasn't buying her story, not this time. "A friend from work," I repeated, my voice sharp as I glared at Matt. My fists clenched at my sides. "You two seem pretty cozy for just work buddies." Matt raised an eyebrow, clearly not intimidated. He took a slow sip of his drink, smirking. "We all get along well at the office," he said casually, like nothing was out of the ordinary. Emily shifted uncomfortably beside him, glancing at him like she was silently pleading for him to shut up. But it was too late. My mind was already racing, piecing everything together. I noticed how she subtly moved in front of him, as if she were trying to put a barrier between us. "Yeah," I said, locking eyes with her. "Seems like you've been getting along really well." Her expression tightened. "Dave, stop. You're being ridiculous." It's just a party, okay? Nothing's going on. She laughed, but it sounded forced, hollow. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. If nothing's going on, then why do you look so nervous? Her eyes widened, and for the first time, her cool facade cracked. She bit her lip, glancing away, and I could feel it. The truth was bubbling just beneath the surface, ready to come spilling out. And then it happened. She glanced at Matt, just for a second, but it was enough. The way they looked at each other wasn't casual. It wasn't friendly. It was filled with something deeper, something I hadn't seen between us in a long time. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just my imagination. Something real was happening. Emily noticed the shift in my expression, how everything clicked into place in my mind. Her stance changed, becoming more guarded, like she knew she was cornered. She opened her mouth, probably ready to throw out more excuses, but I wasn't about to let her get away with that. How long, Emily? I asked, my voice sharp. Her eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw panic. I was done pretending. How long has this been going on? Matt stayed silent, the smug grin gone, but he didn't move. He just stood there, watching. The tension between them was thick, impossible to ignore. It was like he was waiting for her to handle this, to lie for him, probably. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, her voice shaky. You're overreacting. Seriously, Greg, it's nothing. Don't. I cut her off, my voice rising. I saw the way you looked at him. Don't stand there and tell me it's nothing. She opened her mouth again, but no words came out. Her eyes flicked back to Matt, and I saw it, guilt, plain as day. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was real. I stepped closer, glaring at her. How long? I demanded, my fists clenched tight. You think I'm an idiot? How long have you been sneaking around? Emily's face turned pale, the mask of casualness finally breaking. She looked trapped, cornered, and for the first time that night, she didn't have a quick answer. There was no escape now. The heat inside me rose, anger mixing with betrayal. You promised me, I hissed, my voice trembling. You said it was just a small gathering. But this isn't just about a party, is it? How long have you been lying to me? She swallowed hard and looked away. And that's when I realized the truth was worse than I'd thought. Emily stood there, her eyes darting between me and Matt, her face pale, like she was desperately searching for a way out. But there was no way out now. I wasn't backing down until I got the truth. Finally, she let out a long, shaky breath, her voice barely above a whisper. A few months. My heart sank. Months? I repeated, barely believing it. You've been doing this behind my back for months? She didn't respond, just looked away, and the weight of her silence said everything I needed to know. The room seemed to close in around me. The air was thick and suffocating. I could hear the muffled sounds of the party carrying on, but it felt distant, like I was trapped in some kind of nightmare. The word months hit me like a ton of bricks. I turned to Matt, who had been quietly watching everything unfold. He was still calm, still acting like none of this was a big deal. You knew she was married. You knew about me. I snarled, stepping closer. And you didn't care, did you? He shrugged, his tone infuriatingly casual. Look, man, it's not that serious. Emily and I were just having some fun. That's all. Fun, I repeated, my blood boiling at the sheer disrespect, not just from him, but from her too. This wasn't just some fling. This was my marriage, my life. But to them, it was just a game. I turned back to Emily, my voice shaking with anger. This is what you threw everything away for? A few months of fun? She flinched, but not fast enough. She was still trying to hold on, still searching for excuses. Greg, I didn't mean for it to go this far, she stammered. It wasn't supposed to be serious. I didn't want to hurt you. Too late, I thought. The damage was already done, and there was no fixing it now. Her weak excuses only fueled the fire inside me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't supposed to be serious? The way she tried to twist things, downplaying months of betrayal, made me furious. She hadn't just broken my trust, she had destroyed it. And now, standing in front of me, she couldn't even own up to what she'd done. It wasn't serious, I spat, my voice rising. You're telling me that cheating on me for months with this guy wasn't serious? You've been lying to me, acting like everything's fine, and now you expect me to what, just shrug it off? Her face tightened, and for a moment I saw something, maybe guilt, maybe fear. But just as quickly it disappeared, replaced by frustration. Greg, I didn't want it to happen like this, she said, almost pleading. But you've been so distant, so caught up in your own world, I felt invisible. My stomach turned at her words, the manipulation obvious. She was trying to twist things, making it seem like I was to blame, like her cheating was somehow my fault. So what? I shot back. You felt neglected, and instead of talking to me, you found comfort in someone else? That's your excuse? She didn't answer. The silence between us was heavy, filled with everything we both left unsaid. I glanced over at Matt again, still standing there, still wearing that smug look. But he wasn't the real issue here, it was Emily. She's the one who allowed this to happen. She made the choice to lie, to betray me. And now? She stood there, trying to make it seem like it was inevitable. You know what, Emily? I said, my voice colder than it had ever been, any last shred of patience gone. I don't care about your excuses anymore. You made your choice. You didn't just cheat, you destroyed everything we had. Her eyes flickered with something. Maybe it was regret, maybe realization, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage was already done. Emily's face hardened at my words, but I could see the cracks forming in her tough exterior. For a second, it looked like she might break down, like the weight of what she had done was finally hitting her. But instead, she crossed her arms, her voice turning sharp. You think this is all on me? That I'm the only one who messed everything up? Her sudden defensiveness threw me off. I had expected regret, maybe an apology, but not this. She was still trying to shift the blame, and I wasn't having it. Oh, I'm sorry, I replied, dripping with sarcasm. You're right. I'm the one who let some random guy put his hands all over me at our party. Totally my fault. She glared at me, her frustration flaring in her eyes. You think I wanted it to get this far? Do you even hear yourself? We've been falling apart for years, Greg. I tried to talk to you, tried to show you how distant you've been, but you didn't care. I was lonely. Lonely. That word echoed in my head, twisting the knife even deeper. I wasn't going to let her play the victim, not after everything she'd done. Lonely? I shot back. And what, Matt, was your solution? You didn't try to fix things, you went behind my back. If you were so unhappy, you could have left. But no, you chose to cheat. That's on you, not me. Matt stood there, silent, the smug grin long gone from his face. He wasn't part of this conversation anymore. This was between me and her. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, her voice trembling now, but I could hear how weak her words were. But I was hurting too. You stopped caring a long time ago. Her words stung, but there was no way she was going to twist this into something that made her the victim. No, Emily, I said, my voice firm. You're not the victim here. You had a choice, and you made it. And now you're trying to justify it, like this is somehow my fault. But this, all of this, is on you. For the first time, she didn't have a quick comeback. The reality of what she had done seemed to finally sink in. The silence between us was thick, heavy. And for the first time, I saw Emily falter. The defiance, the blame shifting, it all drained out of her. She stood there, staring at the floor, her arms uncrossed, her posture no longer defensive but lost, like she didn't know what to say next. And honestly, neither did I. But the anger still burned in me. It wasn't enough for her to just stand there, looking regretful now that everything was out in the open. She needed to understand what she had done. She needed to face the damage she caused and admit that she's the one who ruined everything. You don't get it, do you? I said, breaking the silence. My voice was low, trembling with everything I had held in. You didn't just cheat on me, Emily. You broke me. You made me doubt everything, every moment, every word, every memory. And now you're standing here, acting like it was inevitable, like I'm the one who drove you to this. She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read: regret, guilt, maybe even fear. But I wasn't sure if it was fear of losing me or fear of facing the consequences. I didn't mean for it to get this far, she whispered. I didn't plan any of this. I was just… I don't know. I was lost. And Matt, he was there. I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. He was there. That's all it took? Some guy showing up and giving you attention? You really expect me to believe that? That it just happened? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She knew there were no more excuses, no more lies she could tell. And for the first time that night, she seemed to understand the weight of what she had done. But it was too late. I took a step back, the finality of it all crashing over me. I'm done, I said, my voice quieter now, but steady. You can keep your excuses, your guilt, whatever. I'm done with this. I turned to leave, and this time, she didn't try to stop me. As I reached the door, something in Emily shifted. For the first time that night, she stepped toward me, her voice breaking through the thick silence. Greg, wait! She called out, her voice desperate now, cracking like the facade she'd been holding on to all night. But there was nothing left to say. I paused at the door, not because I wanted to, but because a part of me needed closure. I needed her to truly feel the weight of this moment, to understand that this wasn't something she could just walk away from with a few weak apologies and a sad expression. You don't get to do this, I said, my back still turned to her. You don't get to lie for months and then suddenly act like it matters now that I'm leaving. You made your choice, Emily, and now you've got to live with it. Her voice cracked again, even weaker this time. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can. I turned around, cutting her off with a hard look. Fix this? I repeated, my disbelief mixing with sorrow. You really think there's anything left to fix? I shook my head, feeling the weight of her betrayal in every word. You destroyed everything, Emily. You took what we had and threw it away like it meant nothing. And now you want to fix it? Tears began to pool in her eyes, but I couldn't find any sympathy for her. Not anymore. I had been gutted by her betrayal, torn apart by the lies, by the months of pretending everything was fine, while she flirted and laughed with someone else. What did you think was going to happen? I continued, my voice cold and final. But this? Us? It's over. Her tears finally spilled over, but seeing them did nothing for me. It was far too late for that. I had given her everything, and she had shattered it without a second thought. Without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving Emily, her tears, and the wreckage of our life behind. I stepped into the night, the cold air hitting me like a slap in the face. Every step away from that house felt like I was pulling myself out of quicksand, like I was finally free of the suffocating weight that had been crushing me for months. The sound of the party grew fainter behind me, fading just like the life I thought I had. But instead of relief, all I felt was emptiness. The anger, the betrayal, it had burned through me like a wildfire, leaving nothing but ashes behind. I had lost Emily long before tonight, and maybe, deep down, I had always known it. But seeing it happen, hearing her excuses, watching her stand there with Matt, it tore me apart in ways I hadn't expected. I got into my car and just sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel tightly, staring at the future I had imagined crumbling before me. Everything we had planned, every promise we had made, it was all gone. And now? Now, all that was left was the hollow realization that I didn't know what came next. But then, as I looked out at the dark, empty street, something unexpected hit me, a strange, quiet sense of clarity. Emily had made her choice, and now I had made mine. She had chosen lies, betrayal, and her so-called fun. I had chosen to walk away. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was taking control of my life again. I took a deep breath and started the engine, the steady hum of the car filling the silence. As I pulled away from the curb, I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me there. I knew it would take time to heal, to rebuild. But one thing was certain: I deserved better, and from now on, I wouldn't settle for anything less.